Partnered by Times Influence.
Welcome to the discussions based on the backdrop of the Autocar Awards 2018 presented by Reliance General Insurance. And every year we talk to dealers and manufacturers alike on the hot topics that are based around the automotive industry. Well, today I have a set of dealers with me who are going to talk to me about the way mobility is changing, the way consumers are affected by the way mobility is changing. We've got now ride-sharing apps, car sharing apps, and so much happening, and this largely impacts them. I have with me here Mr. Kachalia from Navneet Group. I have Mr. Nanavati from the Nanavati Group. I have with me Mr. Bhandari from BU Bhandari Motors. I have Mr. Jabak, who's from the Mahavir Group, and I have with me Mr. Rao, who's from the Orange Group. Welcome, and let's just dive right into it. We're going to see metros coming up. We're going to see ferries coming up. We see, things like Uber, Ola, and it's just completely changing the landscape of how people expect transportation to be. So has that had a huge impact on dealers and the way cars are sold?
Yes, of course, because with the new government coming in place, the infrastructure has been going on a very high scale on metros, the rails, the metros, the bridges, the connectivity between east and west. So probably with that and Uber and Ola playing a very vital role, I mean they are just one app away and they are much cheaper on a daily basis than operating an own car. And you don't have a parking hassle. They give you point-to-point destination, and probably the cities which will grow is C, D, E category, where those farmers and agriculture incomes are too high. But as far as metro is concerned, I think people would prefer not to travel by own car because it takes too much of a long time, and rather than it's better to travel by a metro or Ola Uber where they are tension free. So probably we need to really look at it, how to gear up for our numbers in metro.
So how much has this really impacted your numbers as a general? I mean, have you seen a big drop in sales per se this year as opposed to previous years? Because when we see the automobile manufacturer numbers, they're still up.
No, they are up by only 5%. I'm really speaking, if you see metros like Mumbai, it's stagnant.
See, yes, it has definitely had the impact, but we're getting new customers coming into the system, so that's why you're not seeing the difference actually happening. But in the lower end, you find a lot of people moving in towards the Olas and the Ubers. It's more so, the millennial children and the millennial people, they don't like to drive around too much. Cars actually they are last in priority. So they feel that they need to go from point A to point B without any hassle, and these vendors are there. So why have the headache of having a car? So that's a new kind of thinking, and plus more than anything else, now it's they are all staying away from their families and maybe hard pressed on time. So this is again an option for them.
So another, if you go back a little, the whole concept of transportation to mobility, this has come in last decade and a half. Transportation till a decade and a half back was largely system centric. It was a system centric concept. From that, we are now moving to mobility, which is far more user centric concept. Now that's a complete shift in the mindset. Whether it's India or global, you will see largely policymakers who are making this shift. The good part is that vehicle manufacturers themselves, and which is the most interesting, you have large manufacturers which are themselves also getting into mobility services. So you have got global players like Volkswagen or Daimler or Ford. These companies are getting themselves into new mobility services. So whether it's car sharing or ride hailing or any of these products, other than the Ubers, you're seeing all the manufacturers also get into that, which is a huge shift by itself.
Yeah. So I largely see with manufacturers, they are still getting the numbers because an Uber or an Ola or whatever it is has to buy the vehicle at the end of the day. But where I see the effect coming is with you people. So is that changing for you? I mean, are you also now looking at a new kind of consumer entirely? I mean, before it was the guy who walked into your retail showroom, and that was where the sale point was. But has that really changed for you as well?
No, definitely it has changed. Set of customers have changed. With the new generation coming, the generation Y coming up, they obviously prefer the app-based service because it is more convenient. You get less of hassle. The capital investment is not there. The additional maintenance costs, the insurance costs, all add up to the entire owning experience of the car. So now with the new generation coming, I think mobility, they prefer point A to point B, and with the less hassle. Plus one more thing is they can do multitasking as well. So they obviously prefer, and obviously it has impacted the dealership business as well. Manufacturer numbers might be growing, but yes, so I think to counter that, the dealership needs to look at maybe tie-ups with some of the service providers, the app-based service providers, or the alternative mobility experts. So that is where the dealers need to gain their numbers from.
Has that really changed for you in the sense that now, as opposed to training the guy to actually sell in a showroom, you have to employ a different kind of person to go out there, speak to cab aggregators, speak to, people who are doing bulk buying because the entire like Zoom cars or whatever it is. So has that changed for you? I'll go with you, Mr. Jabak, first as well.
It has actually changed a lot. Earlier we would go in for an individual requirement. But today we have to talk about this would look at your mass supply, this would look at all the small features which you need in the car without the price being too high. It will be more on feature to cost is what our talk is than only feature to feature.
Yeah. Mr. Rao, do you find there a big difference between what you had to do with the individual consumer and what is the requirement of, say, cab aggregators?
Yes, definitely yes. We need to look at two different ways of conducting business these days. What we need to see in India, even though the mass transport system is increasing in most of the metros, but still the mobility is not up to majority of the city. So still the individual customer is looking at the end satisfaction to reach the destination. And the mass segment like cab operators or mass fleet operators, they are looking at a different mode. But today, most of the companies are also looking at bringing down their cost on this mass transport system, which is causing the major damage of traffic in the metros. So we need to look at two different verticals of conducting business: individual passenger customer as well as the quantity mass or fleet operator. So that's how we need to move forward coming ahead.
So, I mean, this also obviously impacts not only the sales end of it, but the service end of it, because that becomes like now you have a fleet that's going to be coming into you for service and for requirements, and that's a completely different kind of requirement as well, probably far more often because fleets have damages and things like that happen because they're cabs that are traveling all the time. So has that, have you had to change your entire service setup as well?
They work on a shift. They want a lesser time in the workshop. So the workshop has to be geared up for 24/7 to provide them services.
Okay.
So we really need to do that, and we have been doing it for those clients because each hour of them is a money for them.
So has this shift, what we're talking about, already happened for a lot of you?
I think a lot of manufacturers are coming up with their own express maintenance programs in which they commit the full service and delivery of the vehicle from maybe taking the vehicle into the final delivery with the service within maybe 60 minutes or 90 minutes. So I think going forward, that is going to be the differentiator rather for the dealership, that how quickly you are able to service the vehicle and at what times.
Speed
because
is going to be the matter.
Yeah, because I think lot of this operators maybe have the vehicle available for servicing at odd hours. So is your workshop open at 8 o'clock? Is your workshop open at 7 o'clock in the morning? So that is maybe going to be the differentiator.
I think the downtime would be a key factor for most of these people. So we need to see that if we can get it down to almost zero downtime for them, that would be a very ideal situation. So we're working towards it.
Also see a shift between people wanting to outright buy and people wanting to lease vehicles now? Has that shift already happened, or do you see it happening in the future, especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities we're talking about? Because okay, in the major cities we have seen it, but what about the tier 2, tier 3 cities? Do you see this shift happening there and going all the way down the ranks as well?
So tier 2, tier 3 cities, especially like you rightly mentioned, tier 1 definitely has gone through with that. And largely, whether you're owning a vehicle or you're leasing a vehicle, it depends on the financial model. What is also importantly happening through this is through the new financial models which most of the manufacturers are now getting, it's moving from vehicle ownership to vehicle usership. That's a big mindset shift which is coming in. Through leasing programs, what manufacturers are also going through is they're gaining market share, also reaching younger customers. So like what you mentioned, tier 2, tier 3, a lot of these customers have now started looking at advantages even on the financial side through a leasing model. So yes, that trend is improving.
Well, definitely the scenario of mobility is changing and there's lots of interesting questions that are being raised. Stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk more on this subject. Welcome back. We're on the subject of how mobility and its changing face has impacted dealers, and we're in conversation with them. Mr. Rao, do you agree with that statement? And in that sense, do you also see, like, I mean, in India, people bought a car and then owned it for ages. That was the way it was, and you had, sales, service, everything was a part of the deal because that car lasted your family 10 years. But do you see that shifting, and do you see people changing cars more often, and therefore the entire, again, model of sales and service changing?
Yeah, there's a change in the trend because today younger generation, they want all new things to come faster based on the market condition. This is change, like what our previous generations looked at owning a car was for longer years, but we changed and the next generation is looking at better feature car. There's a trend change happening, particularly in metros. There's a major change happening compared to anything in the rural side.
That emotional attachment is gone.
Yes. Yeah, I think I would like to add to that. Basically, earlier people used to have a pride in owning a particular model or a car, but then I think now the new generation is looking towards something new, maybe every 2 years, 3 years. And with the variety of models and variants and options available with the consumers, I think maybe around 3 years, 4 years is the time that consumers are looking to have the usability of the vehicle and then maybe move to something new and different.
So that throws another interesting question in my mind, because then that when you talk about pride and that brand association is very strong with that. When you have pride in your brand and you own that car and it belongs to you, and like you said, emotional attachment. So now I know a lot of you, each one of you represents a different brand. So does that make it tougher now to actually cash in on that brand value?
No. Because these youngsters who have studied abroad, they have their aspirations. They know where they would stand now from 4 years later.
Yeah.
So they plan their buying pattern in such a way that I am going to keep this car for 2 years. Next 2 years I am going to buy this. Next 2 years I am going to buy this. So they prefer that leasing program where they don't have to pay anything. Just it's get net off from your income, and they buy those cars, and then they.
Yeah, but my question was a little different. Like, I mean, because earlier emotional attachment, so say you always dreamt of owning a BMW or you always dreamt of owning a Mercedes, then you had that emotional attachment you wanted to own. But you're saying the scenario is changing, everybody is moving, changing cars, and there's no emotional attachment to it. So in that sense, has like a brand, cashing in on a brand changed? So if you have a brand and you've been representing it and people would walk through your doors because of that particular brand. So has that changed? Do you think that consumer profile has changed?
Yeah, that changed because it's changed because of simple. Today, younger generation saving is not anymore their concern. Like the older generation, they always wanted to save and buy a car. Younger generation they're earning more than what the older generation earned in their younger age. They want to spend, they want to have the best of the gadget, let it be mobile, let it be car, let it be travel abroad for a vacation. Trend has changed in this country. They want to have the best in their hand always. That's a basic culture change in the system. We are moving towards the Western culture, I think so. I think that's the main thing which is happening in this country.
So few manufacturers are actually cashing on this very, very smartly. And that's where I said that they're investing a lot in the new mobility services. So they actually have two sets of customers now. One, they have the cab aggregators and all these service providers, who forms a large customer. And the other thing, through them, what they are achieving is the end consumer is getting to drive different brands. Is actually, so they're actually going ahead and prompting these end consumers to one day aspire to buy either of these cars. So you see car sharing companies, any consumer would want to buy something that he doesn't have, want to sort of car share a brand that he doesn't own. And that's precisely where these brands want the consumers to aspire, and then finally one day come to other dealership to buy that same brand.
To add to that, as like both of them were saying that today the consumer wants what is happening today. Everything has to be updated and it has to be through my phone and those kind of things. So all the more the manufacturers are going towards those kind of gadgets which will catch the attention of this particular breed of customer. Plus it also looks at the finer aspects which again only the brand can get you.
So now are test drives also something that's been digitized? I mean, I used to always wonder, why can't you just go on an app and plant in a number and say, I want to test drive the car at this time and fix it, somewhere, because otherwise I have to call someone. Is that also changing? Is that something you see coming up in the future where people would be able to book a test drive, car would arrive and they'd be able to...
They are already doing that. They are already in place.
They're already
Yeah.
No, but I doubt that would ever change the actual test drive experience of the customer, because see, somewhere, even if it is for 3 years or 4 years, they need to have some kind of a bonding with the vehicle. So unless and until they go and physically test drive the vehicle, I think that connect will not be there. So with digitalization and internet in place where they can research everything and go for n number of opinions before even walking to the dealership, I think one aspect is the test drive, which can help us to gain the sales that we require from the customers, because that is where the connect is going to be there.
The test drive will actually make the difference. Right now the person is coming with a preset key, you have this feature already, and if our people are not able to explain the feature on the test drive, then the thing would not happen through.
With the announcements that have been made that there are deadlines in place for electric mobility, do you think that we are ready for it? Do you think dealerships are going to be able to gear up? And do dealerships have a concept of what actually is going to be required of them in that future?
I mean, I don't think so that would be so soon in this country, because we don't have infrastructure in place. I mean, there's no battery manufacturing company who could manufacture so much in masses. They would also create some pollution. I mean, we are talking about reducing the pollution somehow and bringing in battery operated cars. Second thing, you need cars which can go up to 500 to 800 kilometers, which are super power charging stations in between. So if you have to charge the car for 12 hours and you can run 300 kilometers, it won't be a successful model.
Unless they have those kind of infrastructure which can recharge this at a very short time. So till that is developed, then it will not be a popular thing for doing an intercity usage. Within the city, maybe yes, it will be still there, but intercity would be quite a challenge till our infrastructure improves.
I have a little different set of, so I think that on the electric side, it should be. So on the electric side, I think it will come sooner, and it will come with a big bang. As we speak currently, I'm sure somebody sitting in some California shed is actually preparing a battery which may do a 500, 800,000 kilometer, you don't know. Having said that, what we've seen in the last 5 to 7 years, on the dealership side, there has been a huge transformation, whether it's digitization, whether it's sales after sales. So people already have started adapting to newer technologies. So when this comes, I'm sure dealerships and manufacturers will be there to sort of handhold and take it forward.
Great. I think there's so much to look forward to, and there's so much changing as well. But just one quick last wrap from each one of you. What is it that you are looking forward to, and where do you see the biggest change?
I had never seen this country changing every 24 hours. With Modi government, I'm looking at it in a different way. The infrastructures, the roads and everything, the works are going so fast. The work which was happening in 10 years has been happening in 2 months now. So probably 2019 would be the year, probably we would see the country would be a different, the metros would be a different one.
Where do you see the changes?
See, I think the change is already coming at us at quite a fast pace, so it is up to us to adapt to it. I think the OEs and the dealers are very much aware and prepared for the same. So I think as and when the change happens, we should be able to cope up to it. And I think going back to one of the previous questions, everyone has been talking about electric vehicles. But do we really need electric vehicles, or we just need electrification of vehicles? Because I was just going through one of the reports, I think in country like India still 60% of the electricity is produced through thermal plants, which is basically coal based. And then another 10% may be non-renewable sources. So 70% is still non-renewable source of energy that we are producing to produce electricity. So does it actually solve the problem of maybe zero emission that we are looking at? So maybe I think to bridge that gap, unless and until the infrastructure is set up for that, the way forward might be plug-in hybrids, maybe fuel cell vehicles, then going forward with electric vehicles, because we will have ample time to have the infrastructure ready by then.
So mobility as a topic, honestly speaking, is not a revolution, which is not, it's not disrupted the entire system as such, or as, you know, it's taken a hit on the sales or something like that. It's more of an evolution. Gladly, manufacturers, along with dealerships and the entire ecosystem, is sort of adapting it to it gradually. And going forward, I see that to be extremely positive on both sides, as far as mobility side and on the personal usage side as well.
Mr. Javak?
I think we need to preempt a change which is expected or which is coming up. So we have to start planning well in advance as to what is possible, and we have to work towards that. That's what is happening right now, I think.
I think auto industry in this country, it will do well for another maybe one more decade. The reason is we need to go a long way on public transport system. We need to go a long way on electric support system. But only thing is dealerships and manufacturers has to change based on the demand of the customer, the way it is moving forward. That's my opinion.
Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion today. And if you've been watching, well, you've seen that there is so much change, but the outlook is still very positive and there's miles to go ahead.
Partnered by Times Influence.